welcome to my first monthly reads video. In this series I'm planning to review the books that I've read over the past month. I hope you enjoy. So, at the end of July I decided while I was waiting for some new books to arrive, I would reread a book from one of my favourite fantasy worlds. I grew up watching the films constantly and have been lucky enough to visit some of the places that inspired Tolkien. For that and many other reasons, it's always had a place close to my heart. The first of his works that I actually read was The Silmarillion though, which I know isn't normally the one you start with. So I read that, and then a bit later I read Lord of the Rings, and then a few years ago I was lucky enough to buy this wonderful hardback edition. Waterstones in Birmingham has a brilliant display if you're ever after any collector's editions. This is a beautifully illustrated edition. Alan Lee is a wonderful artist, and I think his work captures Tolkien's world perfectly. Also, these pages are delicate. I sped up the footage. Be kind to your books. Thousands of reviews out there, and for good reason, so I'll keep this one short. In terms of the writing, it's nowhere near as hard-going as The Silmarillion is, but it still does take a while to get through it, and it is one of those books that you do sometimes have to sort of go back and reread little parts of it. I forgot to mention here that there is a little bit of Elvish poetry and words throughout, but don't be put off by it. Tolkien did create a whole new language, but you don't have to learn it to enjoy the book. Comparing it to the films, I love them both, and I completely understand why there are differences, and I can understand why those differences are there. With both you go on an emotional journey, which is what's important. Lord of the Rings isn't about battles, magic and dragons, it's about connecting with the characters and, understanding the past and being able to have hope for the future. So, as far as this book goes, it's a great read, and I really recommend it to anybody who loves fantasy, because this just defines the genre, It's what started it. It's, created fantasy as we know it today. I love all the extra lore you get. It gives you so much more depth to the story. I'll stop now before I start rambling for hours about how much I love these stories and the world they are from. No, it's 2020, you're stuck inside, of course you're going to get a little bit excited about the upcoming novel that's going to allow you to relive your teenage years. So, unlike a lot of people, I didn't read the leaked pages that appeared a few years ago, so I really had no idea what to expect from this. But I wasn't really expecting a lot, just a new way to enjoy something that I already did enjoy, and in that case it didn't disappoint. Yes, it was a little bit long and a little bit repetitive, which is one of the main complaints that people had for it, but I felt that that was what made it unique and different to Twilight. Edward can read minds, of course he's going to repeat himself a little bit, and it defines how his life has been so much different from Bella's. His life has been long and repetitive, so of course that would appear in the makeup of the way his mind is described. So, for anybody that really likes Twilight, I think this is a really good read, and even if you haven't read the other Twilight books, I still think this is good, and perhaps an easier way than reading 4 books to sort of get a glimpse of what the story is and have a bit more in-depth and more context. Defeats Magic, this book. And I decided to reread this because I have just got the 4th book in this series, and I decided that I really needed to catch up and remind myself what happened. If you're familiar with Trudy Canavan's work, then you'll know that she's a fantastic world builder and uses a complex magic system in most of her books, which this book definitely follows that pattern. It also, like many of her books, is split between 2 different characters. In this case, the characters are called Tyan and Riel, and it follows them in 2 completely different worlds. That live in 2 completely different worlds. Both seem quite immature at the beginning of this book, but they really do develop as characters throughout, because they go on very similar journeys, but because the worlds that they live in have completely different ideologies towards magic, these journeys can seem vastly different. I really recommend this to anybody who likes fantasy, and especially if you've read Trudy Canavan's other work, although I will warn you that it does get a little bit slow and sedate at points, which is a little bit different than some of her other works, but I think this allows you to get used to the characters and sort of relate more to their hardships because you see them develop so much. So yeah, this is definitely a must read, and I look forward to finding out what happens to them in the 4th and final book. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you'd like to see more content like it, then please let me know in the comments. Also, comment and tell me what you thought of these books if you've read them too. And as always, like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching my video. Bye!